And so if you're a laid off worker from that plant and you look up and say, what is the Democratic Party doing for me? It's unclear.
During the election coverage, Andrew Yang was on CNN and discussed exactly why the Democratic Party has an issue with working class voters. Now, before I play this clip, this is not to excuse the Republican Party, which I think is clearly much worse, but at the very least, Republicans have, or they attempt to have a cultural message for working class voters. The Democratic Party has the ability to offer an economic message for working class voters that they simply do not. Andrew Yang breaks it down.
Democrats don't do a good job of speaking to working class people. What do you say to that? You're supposed to be fixing that.
I had that experience countless times on the trail, Don, where I would say, hey, I'm running for president to a truck driver, retail worker, waitress in a diner, and they would say, what party? And I say Democrat, and they would flinch, like I'd said something really negative, or I just I'd turned another color or something like that. And there's something deeply wrong when working class Americans have that response to a major party that theoretically is supposed to be fighting for them. So you have to ask yourself, what has the Democratic Party been standing for in their minds? And in their minds, the Democratic Party, unfortunately, has taken on this role of the coastal urban elites who are more concerned about policing various cultural issues than improving their way of life that has been declining for years. And so if you're in that situation, this to me is a fundamental problem for the Democratic Party, because if they don't figure this out, then this polarization and division will get worse, not better.
Is that real or messaging or both?
It's real. I mean, Debbie just said they lost a plant that had 1,500 workers. And so if you're a laid off worker from that plant and you look up and say, what is the Democratic Party doing for me? It's unclear. And we can talk about a unifying message from Joe Biden. He's a naturally very unifying figure. But then there's the reality on the ground where their way of life has been disintegrating for years. And if we don't address that, then you're going to see a continued acceleration toward the institutional mistrust that animated the Trump vote and will continue to do so.
Andrew Yang is exactly right. The Democratic Party, even though Joe Biden won the election, they did not perform as well as expected. Joe Biden really barely winning the election compared to a lot of the projections with him getting near 400 electoral votes. He's not even close. But also in the Senate, Democrats not as competitive as expected. And in the House, Democrats actually lost seats. So the issue here is the lack of enthusiasm from working class voters. And this is because the Democratic Party lacks an economic message. Now, the obvious reason for that is because the Democratic Party, like Republicans, backed by big donor money. So Democrats aren't able to offer that economic message. Meanwhile, Republicans are offering a white identity politics message that appeals to white working class voters. The Democratic Party has to be able to appeal to all working class voters, and they just do not even attempt to, because again, the consultant class and the donors that back the party. But let me show you exactly why, if the Democratic Party leadership was replaced with politicians that actually cared about the working class, why they would be successful. First up, I showed you, I had a video on these ballot measures when it came to marijuana legalization, but just a reminder here, marijuana legalization measures are set to pass in 5 states thanks to ballot questions. The Democratic Party, Joe Biden, didn't even attempt to run on this. Marijuana legalization, incredibly popular. I know this is sort of separate from economic issues, but incredibly popular. Didn't even attempt to run on this, and you have it passing in a number of states. But let me show you some other more economic-focused ballot measures. Arizona Proposition 208, tax on incomes exceeding $250,000 for teacher salaries and schools initiative. This is essentially a wealth tax, a tax on the wealthy to benefit education. This passed in Arizona, which again was a red state. As of recording this, right now leaning towards Joe Biden, likely to be called for Joe Biden. But you have here a state that is at least half Republican supporting a wealth tax. Again, this is an issue Democratic Party, Joe Biden, afraid to touch. Bernie Sanders, of course, ran on this. AOC has run on this, has discussed this. It is incredibly popular. This is what people need to understand about taxes. If you look this up, you could check out Gallup polling on this. I don't have it ready in front of me, but if you look up Gallup polling when it comes to taxing the wealthy, Americans see that taxes are way too low on massive corporations and the wealthy, yet they think their own taxes are too high. And I agree with them. Taxes on the middle class and low income people are way too high, but they're not high enough when it comes to the wealthy and corporations. So if the Democratic Party ran on raising taxes on the wealthy, that would be an incredibly popular issue that would get a lot of people out to vote for them. And Arizona, one example of that. Colorado, Proposition 118, paid medical and family leave initiative. This passed. Again, an incredibly popular position that Joe Biden and the Democratic Party simply did not take up. Save for, a few progressives in the House and, of course, Bernie Sanders. This is an issue that the Democratic Party just simply does not push. And if they push this, they would be a lot more popular. Florida, deep red Florida. Donald Trump wins Florida. Yet Florida Amendment 2, $15 minimum wage initiative passes. Joe Biden had this in his platform. Barely discussed it. Did not really run on it. Yet here you have deep red Florida, Trump supporting Florida, backing an amendment to raise the minimum wage. Again, an incredibly popular position that Democrats are afraid to take on for a number of reasons, mainly having to do with big donors. And I believe that's it. No, one more thing. I did save this link. So there were a number of exit polls from Fox News. I want to highlight this one. Changing to a government-run healthcare plan. Strongly favor 39%, somewhat favor 33%. Already we are seeing a majority of voters, vast majority of voters, backing a government-run, even with this kind of framing that usually pushes against the interests or usually, the framing of government-run healthcare plan obviously designed in a way to sound as scary as possible for Americans that have been told that the government doesn't work. While here, government-run healthcare plan strongly favored. They could have said Medicare for all. I bet you the results would be even higher. But government-run healthcare plan, a majority of voters want that. And again, you look at any recent poll on Medicare for all. The most recent one I could think of, 69% of voters back Medicare for all. But an issue that the Democratic Party, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, continually ran away from. If they actually embraced this, they would have seen a much larger turnout. But again, we're talking about special interests, the healthcare industry, insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies. Having those interests in politics, backing both Republicans and Democrats, handicap the Democratic Party's ability to take on issues and support issues like Medicare for all. But if they were to actually take on these progressive issues, these working class issues, the Democratic Party would have seen a much larger turnout in 2020 than they actually saw.